All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Writing Shotgun with Charlie for Armed Lifestyle Magazine. And we are doing an issue on the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. And there was the only person that came to my mind, or the first person that came to my mind, to talk about this is none other than the National Firearms Museum curator, Phil Schreier. Phil, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure, always.
I have to say, I'm only going to fanboy for just a second. The I think the last time we saw each other was at NRA in Indianapolis, and it was late one night, and I was talking with someone, and I said, um, I said, I love what I do. I was talking with someone that's got a big YouTube channel, and he's like, "Oh, Charlie, you're a rock star." I'm like, "No, really, I'm not." And then you came walking out from having some cigars, and I said, "Oh my God, there's Phil. I got to say hi to Phil." So I went over, and you're like, "Oh, Charlie, I've shared the show with so many friends. I had so much fun. They absolutely loved the show." And then you went upstairs, and my buddy was like, "See, I told you." And
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
"Yeah, I'm like, this is the stuff that doesn't pay the rent, but it's uh the what's the word I'm looking for, the value I get from it is it's huge. So I thank you for taking the time to do this with me and to spend time with me. It is uh man, when do I always talk about recording these. This is on July 3rd 2025. So tomorrow is Independence Day. Do you call it Independence Day or Happy 4th of July? What do you say to folks?
Oh, both. Happy 4th, happy Independence Day. Sorry you have to go to work tomorrow. Those of you in the United Kingdom, stuff like that.
That's awesome. That is great. Well, let's talk about the Revolutionary War here. So this is what we're focusing on. The Revolutionary War started like the thing started brewing a couple years before 1776 and before 1775 when the we had the shot heard around the world, right? Like things
Right.
started to kick off a little bit in 1773.
Oh, even before that, you got the Boston Massacre. Oh, one of my favorite parts of giving a tour at the museum is taking people over to the colorized lithograph that we have of the Boston Massacre. It's in every history book, or at least it should be.
Mm,
Uh, and the neat thing about it is you look at the fine print, which most people just ignore, and it says uh, engraved, printed, and sold by Paul Revere, one of the Sons of Liberty. And this portrait of the Boston Massacre that he did raised money for the Sons of Liberty. But it also shows up, if you've got a decent journalism 101 book, as one of the first examples of American propaganda art. And
wow.
and it's supposed to elicit emotions. It
Hmm.
it it, it shows British soldiers lined up shoulder to shoulder, firing very close into an unarmed crowd of Boston citizens, none of whom appear to be armed. And of course, it doesn't show you what was going on before they were uh, given the order to fire. Uh, and it doesn't tell you much about the about what's actually going on, other than, oh my gosh, here's an illustration of the British strong arming
Right.
and massacring it. There were eight, so I'm not sure what the definition of massacre is. I believe there were eight that were killed. And believe it or not, John Adams, future president, signer of the Declaration, defended the British in court and got them acquitted.
Really?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Stuff had been going on 1772. Uh, One of the first captains of what would become the Continental Navy, burned a British schooner off of Rhode Island
Hmm.
and started to say, hey, we're not going to do this. The Boston Tea Party, all in response to the Intolerable Acts, the Stamp Acts, the the Townsend Act, things that uh, got the colonists, worked up. And so the great question is, what drove them to that field in front of Buckman's Tavern on the night of April 18th, so that when Pitcairn and his 300 showed up in the morning at dawn, uh, Captain Parker turned to his 70 men and said, "Don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." And of course, the shot rang out, the shot heard around the world. Who fired it? Which side? A mystery to this day. Uh, and as someone that grew up in the D.C. area, I'm not that familiar with the Revolutionary War battlefields of the North. I didn't get to visit Lexington and Concord until maybe 10 years ago. I was familiar with Valley Forge and Cowpens and Guilford Courthouse, things down south. Well, we had riflemen, down here. I always said that, when I gave a narration one time about the Revolutionary War in the 19th of April, I said, yeah, they fired their rifles from behind the trees, and they were much greater accuracy. There were no rifles at Lexington and Concord.
Really?
There were very few rifles in all of New England. In fact, I found in the Almanac of American Gunsmiths, I think 3 guys in the entire Crown Colony of Massachusetts Bay that made rifles at all. And there were none there. Our dear friend Joel Broy and Dr. Scott have done extensive archaeology in conjunction with the Park Service, and no rifle balls, all smoothbore, both sides. Brown Besses, of course, for the British, and a variety of smoothbore arms for the Americans. And thing is, Paul Revere and those Sons of Liberty, he had a spy network set up. He had quite the extensive spy work net set up. So when General Gates gave Major Pitcairn the orders to go from this place, Cambridge, by whichever route you find to be most practical, that's where the 1 if by land, 2 if by sea comes up. Disperse your men along the road to Lexington and the post road, thenceforth on to Cambridge, and in so doing, seize all stands of arms, ammunition, powder, shot, shell, artillery, anything offensive, which could have been a pitchfork. That was the first time that order had been given. You got to remember, the British had been there forever. Not armed regiments like there were prior to this, but since things started to reach a boil, the British had regiments right there in Cambridge and in Boston, and they went on route marches. That's how you keep guys that age busy. You can't have them sitting around.
Right.
So they would go on route marches regularly through the countryside, and a lot of times there was foraging and looting of some minor sort. But the reason why that night was different was Gage issued that order to take all their guns away. That was the line in the sand. It wasn't the T in the Boston Harbor. It wasn't the 8 dead left in front of Faneuil Hall. It was, they're coming for your guns right now. And already the citizens of Boston proper had been disarmed. They could take a gun out of the arms locker, sign it out if they wanted to use it for hunting. And in fact, that's what most of the colonists there, if they had fowlers, just big smoothbore duck and bird guns that they loaded with ball and used to great effect.
Sure, sure. The they came for the powder. I used to teach in Somerville. I used to work in Somerville, which is it's just north of Cambridge. And one of the schools they had was the Powder House School. And I, of course, me not originally from New England, I always called it the Chowder House School. But it was. I guess I didn't appreciate back then being around that area, that all the history that was there. So I took me a little bit of time before I started to think about it and realize it and appreciate that. Um, the uh the eight everything that happened on the 19th, it didn't last very long, did it? On April 19th when
Well, initially the fight at Lexington Green was pretty early,
mhm,
and that left a number of dead and wounded on the American side. Uh, and then Captain Parker's men dispersed. And they rallied at a place called Parker's Revenge, further down the road to Concord. And when the British came back from getting beat at the North Bridge,
mhm.
Parker's men laid into them on their flanks as they came through at this place called Parker's Revenge. Uh, so initially, the fight started, to the British, and then as the day wore on, it changed to where there were significant casualties inflicted by the Americans on the British,
Right.
and it took most of the day for that because it was a running battle.
Yeah.
It started at Lexington, goes out to Concord, turns around, and then goes all the way back to Cambridge.
Wow. And that's like this is without cars. This is with what, horses and buggies maybe?
Not even buggies. A few officers may have been mounted, but everybody else was on foot. Uh,
That's
so I guess you could Google the distance between Cambridge and Boston and Concord. I think it's about 12
I
or
would say,
15
yeah.
miles.
I was going to say about 10 or 11 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, and most regiments were trained to march. Where you can march about 3 miles an hour, 3 to 4, a little bit more in the double quick. So
Right.
it would take hours just to
Just to
go up
get
there and
there.
back. Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
do that in formation. You got to dress and redress the lines. Uh, fill in gaps.
Mhm.
Make sure your file closers and your sergeants are still able to give orders and move out smartly and accordingly.
Mhm. Now, there is the NRA did a four-part video series on what led up to this, what led up to the American Revolution, and what happened afterwards too. Some of the other battles. So I do want to mention that people should go check that out. It's on the NRA Pub's YouTube channel, and it's also on the NRA. I think it's on the American Rifleman website, maybe.
American Rifleman. And one of the most spectacular parts of this is that when our crew went up there in November of 2024 to film this, uh, we were offered the opportunity to go into the Massachusetts State House in Boston and actually lift out of the case uh, Captain Parker's Fowler
No
that he
way.
used not only there, but I believe also it was with him at Bunker Hill. Uh, and one of the British soldiers, I believe from the 68th or the 63rd, uh, who had been killed during the day, his musket was acquired by one of Parker's men and given to him as a trophy. And so we have an unmessed with Brown Bess, an original Brown Bess
Mhm.
fired and captured on the first day of the War for Independence. And we have the Fowler that Parker used one of the very first shots of the shot heard around the world were fired from that gun, and to be able to actually hold it, photograph it, put it on the TV show, tell its story, was amazing. The folks up in Boston at you know at the
At the State House.
yeah, at the State House at Faneuil Hall,
Mm-hmm.
the Ancient and Honorable Artillery Company, which has a spectacular museum up on the fourth floor of Faneuil Hall. Their curator was more than gracious to let us see their collection, more items that were there on the 19th, and the rich history of the militia, the
Yeah.
Minutemen, and eventually the National Guard and the Ancient and Honorable Artillery. I believe the only Guard unit that's older than that is Virginia, which was formed in 1607.
Oh, wow.
And Ancient and Honorable goes back to, I think, 1630, and they have direct ties with this similarly named unit in London.
Very cool. What's a Fowler?
A Fowler's just a long shotgun.
Okay.
It's meant for shooting birds.
Hence the Fowler. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Okay.
it's just a long shotgun. There were a lot of Dutch ones that were imported. They had a different design, a heavier buttstock to them. They were generally, longer than even a common musket. Folks made them. Certainly, there were committees of safety throughout the colonies before the war that established manufacturing of muskets, mostly banded muskets, some guns that were just copies of the Brown Bess, for the use of their Minutemen or their local militia. Virginia had the Rappahannock Forge and the Virginia Manufactory, making guns, and so yeah, each colony had its own wealth of resources to provide.
Gotcha. Well, something else I'd like to get into is you've spent a lot of time being a reenactor. What do you need in order to do this? Like, you've got to have clothes. You've got to have all the right guns. You've got to have. There's a lot to this, right?
There is. It's. I've seen a few people get out of a BMW and walk through what we call Sutler's Row at an event and just charge an entire impression. And then come out one end, dressed in deck shoes and a polo shirt, come out looking like a Highlander on the other side. But it's very rare, and so basically, most people get into it because they know somebody else, or they kind of go to an event, they see a unit they like that looks smart, and they ask about joining it, and then the guys in the unit will tell them where the best sources for the equipment are. Because you can go through a Sutler's Row, which is basically a gigantic, department store that they set up in these period tents, and buy any manner of things. But you show up at a unit, they've got a specific coat, shoes, hats, tricorns, even firearms. A lot of your reproduction Brown Besses aren't historically correct. They're post-war India pattern guns. So there's a whole cottage industry of hand sewing uniforms, cobblers that make shoes with the wooden pegging system, and silver buckles. You can spend whatever disposable income you have very easily.
It sounds like it.
Oh, yeah, because then you say, oh, well, this is fun. I should probably have a tent and that's going to require a cot, and we want to well, we need a winter outfit because we want to portray guys at Valley Forge. So I'm going to need an overcoat, capote, and cape, all kinds of things that you can, and endless ways of spending your money. Is the folks that probate my estate one day will be chagrined to realize that that's what I did with all my spare income over the last 36 years.
That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So the pressing question I have is, how do you know when to pretend that you've been shot during a reenactment?
So that comes in a number of different ways. The angel of death can visit you on the battlefield when you're walking literally, right into the face of a regiment of muskets, and
Mhm.
you're within range, and they have the drop on you and fire, and everybody that is awake at the time, cognizant of what just happened, will fall. George Hanger was a British major who wrote a book about his experiences here during the Revolution, and he said, "Woe be it to the unfortunate fellow hit and done harm by a ball fired at a distance of greater than 75 paces." So you're talking about less than a football field
Right.
separating you. Now, rifles change that dynamic.
Sure.
You go from an effective Brown Bess at 50 to 100 yards to a rifle that'll put a hole where you want it at 300.
Mm.
So that does change things as the war progresses. I can't tell you how many hundreds of battles I've been in, whether it was Rev War, Civil War, World War One. And when we get fired at, I've taken hits just because it was hot and I was tired. I can remember one Gettysburg, a spectator being concerned that I had been hit by an actual round because I didn't move when everybody got up. They had to come out and wake me.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh. It's hot.
yeah,
You got all this wool on. You need to take a nap.
yeah. I just pass out. Um, I was in a Humvee in Iraq back in 2003, sound asleep, and there was a mortar attack going on. They're like,
Oh my
"How in
gosh.
the world is he sleeping through this?" So I was like,
Very
uh,
nap oriented.
"Yeah, yeah, naps are good."
For
Uh,
sure.
one time I'll never forget. We had it was at Fort Frederick, Maryland. We were actually doing a Civil War event up there because the fort was used during the Civil War era as
Mhm.
well. There was
We,
no combat there.
I don't want to interrupt you. We only have a few minutes left before the Zoom runs out here. So we'll
Hit
tell the
hit me
story
up.
and then we'll tell the story and then
Oh, we
we'll
were
button
all
it up.
tired, and we were all tired and been up all night doing things that you do when you're in camp late at night. And a few of us had some proof gallons to burn off, and it was hot and sunny. And I think 30 Yankees appeared in front of us, and there was probably 200 of us.
Mhm.
And they fired a volley, which was half of their strength, just the front rank. And all of us fell dead at the same time. All 200 of us fell dead to the
Wow.
13 rounds the Yankees fired. It wasn't much fun for the spectators, but we were done at that point.
Oh my God, that is a riot. That is fantastic. All right. To kind of wrap things up here, there's a four-part series on the NRA Pubs YouTube channel and on the American Rifleman website. You're in it. Evan is in it. Gary James. Uh,
Yeah.
Gary James. Oh, you know what? It says we have 10 more minutes. Okay, cool.
Don Triani's in it, the
Oh no,
great
excuse me.
historical artist.
Okay, very
And
cool. Yes, I
and
wasn't sure who he was.
yeah,
So,
no, Don is the best artist living as far as I'm personally concerned, for historical, military. Uh, and Joel Broy
mhm.
is in it. He's possibly, again, in my opinion, one of the foremost historians of Lexington and Concord and the Revolution in general.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, yeah, great cast. Evan put together a fantastic, menu of folks to talk
Yeah.
and share their knowledge. So it was, I really enjoyed being a part of it.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really cool to check it out. And it's, I I like getting all the information. Like every time you watch it, you get something different. Do you know what I mean? And it's one of those kinds of things because there's a lot of things in there. One of the when I watched it the other day, I thought it was kind of interesting that they had to tally up the caliber balls that everybody had because there was a variety of calibers that folks were using. So they had to make sure they had enough, or they had the proper ammunition for all of that. So I thought
And
that
they had to
that
make
was
sure
pretty
their
wild.
flints were working. They actually would, stand in ranks and put new flints in to make
Mhm.
sure that they were going to use fresh flints.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I have a muzzle loader. It's a Kentucky rifle. It's a 45 caliber Kentucky rifle. I'm very sure it's never been fired. It was my father's, and it was something that when we were cleaning up my parents' house, something that we found, me and my sibs, and it's one of the things that I have. I honestly, all I really want to do with it is shoot a raccoon so I can make a coonskin cap and put it over the put it over the fireplace. But I don't have a fireplace and I don't hunt raccoons, so it's it's on the bucket list. It's still out there that I need to do, but um, I always thought it would be a lot of. It always seems like it's a lot of work to shoot muzzleloaders.
So there's a famous, quote. Once you get black powder in your blood, it's impossible to get it out.
Really?
And black powder, I mean, there's something to it, especially flintlocks. And I mean, anybody, and I know this will irritate certain segments of the shooting community. Anybody can get on a bench and clamp a rifle down and put a hole in a piece of paper at 300 yards.
Sure.
Uh, Try doing that offhand with a musket that's got a flint on it and a frizzen that may or may not go off when you pull the trigger. And if you want to talk about, jerking and flinching, you don't know anything until you try to fire a flintlock.
Oh,
Uh,
sure.
and once black powder gets in your blood, cleaning the darn things becomes worth it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a mess to clean that stuff. You just can't take out a board brush
Right.
and a
A
wad of
swab and
cotton
run
cloth
it
and
through.
drop some hoppies down the muzzle. That ain't going to cut it. But it's worth it. I tell
Very
you, the
cool.
most fun I have is with for long guns with you know flintlocks.
Hmm.
Uh, my my Charleville, my Brown Bess, my 1803 Harper's Ferry rifle. Uh, I love all that. Baker carbine that David Stavelo up at Lodgewood in Wisconsin just made for me is it's a work of art. I'm almost afraid to shoot it, but I did, and the group's amazing.
That's
So,
really cool.
like I said, you prepare yourself. You take that down off the fireplace, and you're gonna be hooked.
Yeah. Well, so a couple years ago, for a number of years, there was a local gun store that had they had a muzzle loader, but it had a synthetic stock. And
Oh,
for the longest time, I'm like, that's cheating. That seems ridiculous. All that kind of stuff. Doesn't seem authentic. And then a couple years ago, there was an event and I was going to a bunch of different gun stores and buying ammo at a bunch of different places. And I did this with one of my buddies and I said, you know what? I put money aside because they're only asking $100 for this. And I'm like, for $100, this will get me up and going. It'll get me started. It'll be cool. So I told myself when I go to this gun, I've seen this thing. This was there for, I don't know, 9 or 10 years. It was at this gun store. And I went in on the day I was convinced I was going to buy it and it was gone. I
always
was so
happens.
I was so bummed. I'm like, you have to be kidding me. The day I convinced myself I'm gonna spend $100 to do this, it is gone. I was so mad at myself for missing that.
Yeah, I missed something similar. It was actually uh, an a letter, the letter of abdication, the instrument of abdication that Edward the Eighth signed in December of 1937, I believe. And it was on his Duke of Windsor stationery. It was done before he passed in the early 70s.
Hmm.
Uh, but it was typed out just identical to the way he had read it over the radio to the UK and signed Edward. And boy, I saw that in an antique shop for probably 25, 30 years. And finally one day I said, and he had a stupid price on it, like 5,000. And this is in the 80s. And finally in like 2000, 2001, I went back and I said, all right, how many $100 bills is it going to take to get this to go home with me? And he
Right.
finally said 15. So I thought 1,500 could buy a lot of ammo.
Oh.
And I thought, all right, so I went and got the 1,500 and came back and it was gone. And that was
Oh.
probably 25 years. I think I first saw it in 1978.
That is
And yeah, about 30 years later, it was gone. But anyway,
the guy behind you heard you were going to pay $1,500. He thought it was a deal, so he wrote a check right
it
there.
was a deal. I've never seen another instrument of abdication signed by him.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, listen, we do need to wrap it up here, Phil. Where can everybody find everything that you do?
Oh well, we're at like I say, we're on the interstate 66 in Fairfax, Virginia, just outside the Washington Beltway. We're open 7 days a week, plenty of free parking, free admission. The museum has 2,500 guns that you can come in and look at. A lot of Rev War stuff. And we also have a museum in Springfield, Missouri at the Bass Pro headquarters store there in Springfield. And
Okay.
that's open 7 days a week, free of charge. Uh, and if you can't get us, like I like to say, if you can't get us on the internet, I mean, on the interstate, we're on the internet at nramuseums.org.
All right, we're going to put some links in there below. Phil, thank you so much for your time. Here it is. It's again, it's July 3rd in the evening, 2025. You're smoking a cigar and spending time with me. I'm glad we were able to make this happen, and I appreciate your time. And I thank you guys for tuning in. Please check out armedlifestylemagazine.com. We're going to put some links in there below, and we will talk to you guys next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And it's also the anniversary of Pickett's Charge today, July
Oh,
3rd.
I did not know that. Very cool.
Yeah, 162, I think, if I did my math right.